1, 2, OP02, 3, 4 is making me snore. 5, 6, then let's switch.
Card D Kaizoku.
Welcome to my OP03 Pillars of Strength primer. In this video, we'll be going over notable new cards as well as a surface level view of some of the new leaders and changes to old leaders we can expect to see in the new set. I'll do my usual detailed deck breakdowns for individual leaders in the coming weeks, but I just wanted to give a general look at what to expect to start off with. Let's go over some notable new cards by color. We'll start with red. Red in OP03 is more event card focused and comes with even more Whitebeard Pirates support. We have Izo as our first Whitebeard Pirates searcher. He gives us the much needed consistency in finding cards when running the Whitebeard package. I would even venture to say that Izo is the reason Moby got banned, as it became way too easy to always find the stage card. He can be used in Whitebeard Tribal, Luffy running the Whitebeard package, Ace decks to search for Whitebeard events, and even Zoro as a weenie who can search for Marcos. Next up is Buggy, another 1-cost searcher. I would say now red is the color with the best searchers in the game. Gone are the days of running out of cards in hand in OP01. Buggy lets you search for any red event card. There's a lot of new good red event cards, so he'll see play in Ace decks. He's also aggressively statted with an identical stat line to a Sunny-kun, so he'll see play in Zoro even if you whiff on his search. He's even randomly immune to slash attribute characters, which can throw the unaware off guard. Next up is Marco. To be honest, I think it was kinda dumb to print another red mid-game Marco, literally one set after we got the blocker Marco in OP02. I would have preferred to see him in a different color or a different cost, but all that criticism can be ignored due to how good of a card he is. He has a Vista-like effect on play and he can revive like OP02 Marco could, except using event cards as fuel instead of Whitebeard Pirates cards. He's so good that he morphed the playstyle of pretty much every red leader to run more event cards. Let's switch over to green. Green focuses on the East Blue type. This section will be quick because unfortunately the only notable card is Don Krieg. Don Krieg is sort of like OP01 X-Drake on crack. He can kill 2 rested targets, which will really slow down any aggressive deck enough for you to catch your breath. He's also a potent offensive threat since he can gain double attack for just 1 attached Don. But we still do see green get lots of play in OP03s, so it just goes to show you how much power green already has in its available cards. Let's take a look at blue. Blue introduces our first alternate win condition strategy in the form of self-milling. That means when your deck runs out of cards, you actually win the game instead of lose. That makes things a little complicated since I have to judge the card on whether it's good for a self-mill deck or if it's a good card in general for other blue decks. I'm going to disregard the self-mill support cards for this video though. Since this is the introductory set for this archetype, you're pretty much going to run all the cards that support it anyway since there's not much options yet, so I feel there's no point in going over them. So our notable blue cards include Kaya. She's a 2k counter that can cycle 2 cards for 1 Dawn. This makes her a great flex card since you can use her defensively or proactively to search your deck for an answer to a given situation for an insanely cheap cost. Next up we have 3000 Worlds. This is Arabesque Brickfist, but you really mean it this time. Bottom decking is effectively as good as KOing a character, so this means blue gets its own jet pistol. What's even better is that you can target black cards that cannot be KO'd by effects. It even has a trigger that can bottom deck a 3-cost card. And now, the color you've all been waiting for. It's purple! And that concludes our purple segment. Yeah, unfortunately, purple got the short end of the stick. It's the first color to introduce a new type of leader, one that can't attack. Iceberg revolves around 5-cost Galley Law company cards, so naturally the set has to support that, meaning we get cards that don't really translate well to other purple leaders. I guess honorable mentions would be the 2 new Jailer Beasts that kind of expand Scotty's available targets to cheat out, but I don't think that's enough to save purple at the moment. Hopefully the non-attacking leader gimmick is improved upon and becomes viable in OP04. Now we'll move on to black. This is one of the colors I'm most excited for. They get a new package of cards to play in the form of CP9 agents. Their gimmick is relying on having other CP9 cards already in your trash to activate their effects. We'll start off with Isho. Isho can cause your opponent to discard 2 cards at random if they have 6 or more cards in hand. This is devastating against certain decks like Whitebeard or Law who like to keep giant hand sizes. For 1 attached Dawn, he has a weaker 10-cost Kuzan effect where he can reduce the cost of everything by 3 instead of 5. For most cases, this is usually enough. The next notable card is Kaku. He kills the same things as Kobe, but you don't have to discard a card to do it, saving your precious cards in hand for use later on. Having a 6k stat line means he won't need any additional Dawn to attack on later turns as well. We also have Khalifa, the premier CP9 2k counter. Being a 2k counter means she'll end up in your trash more often than not, fueling the other CP9 character effects like Kaku's. Even on play, she's great. She can cycle 2 cards to discard 2 other CP9 cards in your hand and replace them with cards that may be more useful. She also reduces the cost of another character by 2 while doing this. Definitely a flexible card that fills the playstyle of black perfectly. Next we have Fukuro. He's a cheap blocker to start, which already makes him viable, but he's also immune to KO effects, so the bajillion ways people have to deal with 3-cost characters we have now by OP03 can't even touch him. He's a blocker you can play early and not have to worry about. Then you can use him to block at the most opportune time later. Even if you block with him early, since he's a CP9 card, he activates cards like Kaku. He even has 1k counter to top it all off. Finally, we have brand new, Black's first searcher. He can only search for Navy cards, but luckily for us, the Navy Admirals are the best cards in black anyway. He can only search 3 deep, but he also trashes the remaining cards instead of body decking them. So he's a good CP9 activator on top of being a Navy searcher. He's basically the glue between the Navy and CP9 card types. Finally, we'll move on to yellow, the completely new color of the set. Not too many of the cards in the Big Mom and Yamato starter decks are that great, so you'll depend heavily on OP03 for the core of the deck. The first notable card is Charlotte Pudding. She's a much needed searcher for the Big Mom Pirates archetype. Next up is Charlotte Perospero. He's a pseudo searcher who searches on KO. He, along with Cracker and Smoothie, have a trigger that allows you to play them by discarding 1 card. This makes cards that can replace themselves like Pudding and Perospero even more important for the deck, as they can provide you with cards in hand to utilize these powerful triggers. Next we have 10-cost Charlotte Linlin. She's an insane boss monster that can heal 1 life for yourself while removing 1 life for your opponent. She's also aggressively statted at 12k power for 10 Dawn. She adds both defense and offense and is incredibly sticky at that stat line. Finally, we have Katakuri, another boss monster that is also removal. He can remove any 8-cost or less character on board and place it in your opponent's life area. That's essentially just as effective as KOing them, as it would cost a tremendous amount of effort to replay any big character targeted by Katakuri this way, while also dealing with his now 8k body on board. Katakuri, along with 10-cost Big Mom and 7-cost Big Mom, possibly makes yellow the king of boss monsters. Alright, to wrap this video up, we'll go over some popular leaders and how they'll change. To wrap this video up, we'll go over new leaders and some popular leaders and how they'll change upon the release of OP03. We have to start off with my boy Zoro. His playstyle will remain the same, play searchers and go wide. The only difference is now Zoro will run more event counters to supplement Buggy and Marco. Izo makes drawing Marco and Whitebeard more consistent too, while also being a body that can attack. Law pretty much doesn't use any new cards from OP03. The deck is still good and still wins tournaments, so that's how strong his leader ability is, that he doesn't even need any new cards. Kid gets Don Krieg, but that's about it. For Luffy, I don't believe there's a definitive best playstyle for him yet, but if you run the Whitebeard package like I do, Izo will increase your consistency for sure. If you run the more control style of Luffy that revolves around reducing the power of characters to remove them, Marco is a great addition to that deck. Doflamingo doesn't gain anything from OP03 besides Kaya as a flex 2k counter option. Whitebeard gains and loses. The Whitebeard Pirates package feels complete now with Izo and Marco. Haruta, Teach, and Speed Jill are also viable in Whitebeard Tribal. The loss comes with the banning of Moby Dick, which is a stage card that provided an insane anthem effect that was stupid easy to activate. But Whitebeard is still a top tier deck even without Moby Dick. Kinemon gains nothing from OP03 and probably many other future sets due to his leader ability's reliance on Wano Country cards. We may start to see him slowly fade away. Smoker gains a Searcher in Brand New and an amazing chump blocker in Fukuro. Ace is a new meta leader with a strong existing Whitebeard and event package to draw from, along with a plethora of new toys in OP03. How many more meta red leaders do we need? Nami is a new leader with an alternate win condition that feels like it's on the edge of viability. It just feels like it needs one more expansion of support. But you can expect to see it win as it catches people off guard in the beginning of the set, until people figure out how to play against it. Lucci will be the new premier black leader that focuses less on removal and more on the mid-range game. Lucci doesn't depend on 10-cost Kuzan, but he still runs a fair amount of removal himself. His ability to untap once per turn on any KO can help you in trading wars or finishing out games. Katakuri will be one of the 2 premier yellow leaders in OP03. One Dawn allows him to swing for 7k, which is a difficult stat line to defend against, especially since he can do it from the first turn he can attack. Being a Big Mom pirate gives him access to 10 cost Big Mom too, who is a devastating boss monster to face. The other premier yellow leader is Yamato. She basically has access to the same yellow cards as Katakuri minus 10 cost Big Mom. The difference between the two is that while Katakuri gets 1k extra power for one Dawn, Yamato is more defensive in that she gets 1k extra power on your opponent's turn when you're at 2 life or less. So that's pretty much all you need to know about the OP03 meta at a glance. We'll take a more nuanced look at each leader in the coming weeks, and we'll even dive into some of the less popular or jank leaders too. I hope you're as excited for OP03 as I am. Okay, bye.
Card D Kaizoku.